Hello, and welcome to a new episode, a few days before Christmas. This episode, we talked to Peter Hitchcock, which, was really one of the original people that inspired me to sort of do this project. I know Peter from Final Cut users group. He was always a really nice guy, and I didn't know that much about him. You just kind of talk, chat casually. And then one day, someone told me, like, oh yeah, Peter worked on that TV show, the Thunderbirds. You can actually see some part of his hand and stuff like that in the show, because the show was with puppets, marionettes. And I was just like, I'd watched this show when I was a kid, and I was like, what? That's crazy. That's like so cool. And, over the years, as I've gotten to know Peter, he's always a super nice guy. And he's, an independent filmmaker through and through. This will be a journey through Peter's entire creative life, which spans over 50 years. So I'm going to split this up over several episodes. It'll take us into the new year. Peter's worked on a lot of projects, infamous and famous, including like Wes Craven, Tippi Hedren, and even now, he's still continuing to be a creative person, finishing up his first feature film, which he wrote and directed and produced, which was super cool. Now, this is a life, everybody. So take a trip with Peter and I to the 50s and 60s in England, where you can watch the Rolling Stones twice a week and book Paul Simon for a gig.
Well, I'm so old that we didn't have TV. We used to listen to radio and radio plays. So,
right.
But my grandma loved taking me to the cinema, so she would take me to see a Hitchcock movie and things like that. When I was really young and quite scared out, but she would take me anyway.
Oh wow!
I started off. I as a child, I used to stutter, and I was a nervous kid. And my mum, who was a singer, and her father had a little theatre troupe up in Liverpool, and they would do comedy and things like that. And he wrote hundreds of songs and things like that. And she decided to take me to this drama school. And so I would learn how to open doors, how to sit, and posture and, stuff like that. This is in Surbiton, Surrey, just outside London. It would take me about 15 minutes on the train to get up to London.
Oh, okay.
And the theatre school actually sent us kids out for auditions, right? And the first film that I actually got a job as an extra was at Shepperton Studios. Shepperton, it's called I can't remember the film now. It's called The Story of Esther Costello. You see, when you get older, you kind of have a memory delay, but eventually comes back. So I got to work as an extra up at Shepperton Studios on a film called A Story for Esther Costello, or A Story of Esther Costello. It's such a long time ago. And it was a big studio, and they had a scene where they were shooting people in a car. In the studio, they had a set all built for Forest, and they had a big stage show set up where there was us kids singing at the top of it, all things bright and beautiful, which I believe got cut out of that. But I saw the camera, and it was just so exciting, right? And I started working as an extra on other films like The Horrors of the Black Museum and a British TV show called Dixon and Doc Green. And it just caught me. So
your parents were sort of in the creative industry then. You weren't like the odd one out or anything like that I feel.
No, well, my dad actually tried to be a filmmaker. I've actually got his card saying filmmaker, and he was a draftsman. He ended up working for the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington, which was a fascinating place. I mean, that was the first computer was there. I went and saw that, and we played noughts and crosses as a kids' party there. But it was a place where there was a lot of scientific research, and and development. I saw laser machines, and it was quite wonderful. My dad was a photographer too, and my mum, she liked the stage, and it was kind of like why they kind of got divorced. And my mum remarried, and a guy who was her pianist, and this guy was an amazing guy. He actually worked for Charlie Chaplin, writing his music. Now Charlie Chaplin wouldn't give him a credit as a music composer because Chaplin didn't know how to write music, and he could only play a few notes on the piano. But he was worried about the rights, and he said to Eric James, who's my stepfather, where there's a right, there's a writ. So what credit would you like? And Eric said, well, in spite of Eric James, or something like that, in spite of Charlie Chaplin. And anyway, they said, I can't remember exactly that, but anyway, he said, music. I'm going to give you credit as a music associate. So if you go into Netflix, you'll see a lot of Chaplin films right now, and you'll see Eric James's name there. And Eric would go over to Switzerland and spend time with Charlie Chaplin in his house in Vevey in Switzerland, and he stayed at a very pucker hotel, and Chaplin would send his Bentley up to pick him up, which he really liked, and stuff like that. And he spent time with Una and the family. I've got all his family pictures of how he spent time in Switzerland here, and he wrote a book in the end called Making Music with Charlie Chaplin that sold. I think there's a few books still available on Amazon, used or something like that. I think they stopped printing them now. But so I have that background as well. So I helped work on some remakes of Chaplin films, recording the music and editing. And he was just a great laugh all the time. He was just a great funny guy. But I guess I came from that kind of creative background, and I think my sons are also creative as well. We're a creative family in the house, right? So I kind of like being like that. Like we've been through some very hard times, but it's certainly been rewarding.
And when how old were you when your grandmother would take you to the cinema?
7.
Oh, wow. And do you remember one of the, I don't know which you remember, what was the first one or whatever?
Well, I was just on Google Earth seeing where the house was. It was a very small house, and I just was gliding around the road, and I saw the place that I think was a cinema that we used to go to. This is just a couple of days ago, and she used to take a whole bunch of food in with her too. We were all eating, as we were watching the movie.
Right.
And, but those days there was a pantomime, and I have to kind of go back a little bit with myself, because when I used to go up there, I used to go and see the Punch and Judy shows, and I got a picture of myself, as a kid, looking at just enamored with the Punch and Judy shows, and I actually ended up having marionettes as a kid, and my dad built a stage. We had lights, and I had a little plasticine cauldron, and I did a show for a neighbor, and I had flash powder, and I lit the flash powder to make I had a puppet witch, right, and it burned a hole in the carpet of this party, so I didn't get hired back. But it sort of led my way. These are sort of all elements that sort of I went to a private school, and a private school wasn't particularly good. I think it's a big con job, and I didn't do too well at school, and I left school at 16, and I went to the labour exchange, and the guy said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I would like to work in the film industry. And he said, well, I'll give you a lead to a Granada cinema and you can try your luck getting a job there as a projectionist. And so I got a job as a projectionist at Granada Cinema in Kingston, and I went to college one day a week, and I was there about a year, and we had stage shows, and we had Little Richard playing in there, and it was stereo sound, and the Guns of Navarone was wonderful to watch, and I used to just watch these films, and we had two projectors, and you have to sort of flip them over and stuff like that, and there was electric organ, and I'd run the spotlight on that, and it was just lots of fun. Anyway, so this usherette had a union paper, and she noticed that there was a job for a projectionist in this studio, and this studio was called AP Films. And I went up in my little bubble car and got an interview with a person called Sylvia Anderson, and it was for a TV series called Stingray. And this, if anybody knows about it, it's got puppets with strings, and it had a lot of special effects. It had back projection, which I also worked on, and I would screen the rushes and things like that. And one day, a guy got sick, and his job was to operate a lip sync machine, and so I switched. I learned how to do it very quickly, and also part of that job was to be the assistant director and do script and continuity and write down that. And then when we weren't doing dialogue, I was help building sets and things like that, and pushing the dolly, and then another series started after that called Thunderbirds. And Thunderbirds had a lot of special effects, and they were kind of running out of time. And I actually, they closed down one puppet studio. There were several studios in this complex, and I worked with Derek Meddings, who was a legend in special effects. I did puppets as a kid, magic as a kid, and I was a magician, doing all these tricks. And then I'm working with one of the greatest miniature special effects person ever. So I just, there's not much miniature special effects because it's all video effects now, and it's amazing to see that transformation, right? And they had things where they had tanks, and there was an episode where there was these scientists, a bad scientist had dropped this chemical into the swamps, and the alligators grew large. So we had to film all these alligators sort of attacking the house. Well, they're about a third the size of a house, right? On our set, and it was my job to go in and try to grab them, because they would go up into the water, into the tank. So I'd have to do a wader, and you have to put your hand up to attract them and go and grab them. They were little ones, but then we would have a big one too. But it was a difficult shoot. Let's put it that way.
And wait, what year were you born? I'm trying to figure out what movies your grandmother was.
Oh, right, 1945.
45. So she started taking her own years. So it was the 50s. Oh, okay. So it was actually like the Hitchcock sound era already.
Yeah. Well, I was a projectionist on Psycho. I could say that, and there was a big sign outside the cinema saying, nobody is allowed in at the last 15 minutes of the movie, and there was a flashing light. Yeah?
I think they wouldn't let anyone in after the first 15 minutes.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I thought it was the last 15 minutes because that's when the shower curtain scene took place. So,
right.
I don't know. Anyway, that was that. So I saw Psycho quite a few times as a projectionist.
Right. I think that was like 1959 or 1960. I think it was
1960. So I was about 17 then. Right.
Oh, okay.
So,
do you remember the first Hitchcock movie you watched, or your grandmother?
Vaguely, yeah. I did know the name of it, but it was like they were digging a hole in a back garden, and they were burying a guy. That's all I can remember. I have to look it up, but I think I'd have to go and watch it again to figure out which one it was. But I was quite scared,
Right, yeah, I bet. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
7 years old. Actually, like one of the filmmakers I just met, he said his dad showed him Dawn of the Dead when he was 4.
Oh, Jesus.
And like he, as a kid, he actually had no concepts of zombies, so he actually thought those were just people doing that to each other.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we I don't know. I think you had it here. They had Saturday morning cinema for kids.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so we'd all go off, and they would have Batman and the very beginning of Superman and things like that, which was fantastic, right?
Right.
I think it was. I can't remember if it was Batman. It was definitely Superman, though.
I find a lot of filmmakers, they have like there's like that one movie that changes the way they think about movies, and then they go, I want to do that. For you, did you have that, or was it that when your mom brought you as an extra on set, that formative?
Going back that time, I don't.
Like, for example,
I never thought I could be a movie maker back when I was younger, right?
Right.
The most
like being on set.
Yeah, it was just. This all just suddenly. It's almost like life had its course for me already. When I look back at my life now, for so many years, it's a long time.
Yeah.
But it seems to be there's been a pattern, where from me being nervous and stuttering and things like that, and I think I used to like to do painting a lot, but I always had a kind of a creative bent, and then playing with puppets and the magic tricks, and then actually getting a job as a projectionist, that really did. Just the idea of me working on these sets, seeing how people worked. There was another one, Aladdin and his Magic Lamp, and I was a kid extra, and Elstree Studios, right? There was all this sort of like building up inside me that this seemed like a really nice thing to do, and go and get a job,
Right. And did you have any favorites when you were growing up, like favorite films or things you gravitated more towards?
Well, I think basically there was just the general big time films, that we all sort of like, the Guns of Navarone or the Lawrence of Arabia, these great movies that we were presented with. There was nothing like it. Even today, you watch Lawrence of Arabia and you see the cinematography. It's just a wonderful movie, right? So there was those, but there was also, now you mention it, it was like there was very low budget indie movies that I liked. The L-Shaped Room. There was what's it called? Rita Tushingham had a movie. Oh, sorry, I've got to get I have to get my script. I have to write a script now, right?
Yeah.
But the L-Shaped Room. There was these like really like gritty dramas. They didn't have all the nastiness that the movies nowadays have. It was more like along a Hitchcock style, a German style, if you wish, in some ways, But I was never a student of film. I was always just the audience, right, going in and, taking a girl in to see a movie or something like that. There was like the movies didn't really become a passion.
So back in England, you worked for AP Films. Did you work for, how long were you there?
I guess I was there for 2.5 years.
Oh, okay, that's quite a while. And you didn't work and it was just mostly on Stingray and Thunderbirds, no other shows or whatever?
No, just those 2 shows. But there is another story to this, is that I got, how the web suddenly comes alive with all these fans. Well, there's a site called Facebook, a site called Fan Anderson. And I went on there and I got invited to speak at the convention in Maidenhead a few years ago, and so I flew over there, and I basically had not spoken to a large audience before. It was like 450 people. And I spoke twice, and there was another guy there. I'm trying to remember his name now. Oh, shit.
They're all Thunderbirds fans.
Yeah, well, Thunderbirds fans, yeah. There was it's awful. It's getting old. There's one of the big problems trying to remember names, right? And especially so long ago.
Right.
But he was another big special effects guy that people would recognize, and I'll have to Google it or something like that.
Yeah. I remember when you went? Did you film or did they give you footage of the event or anything, or?
No. I actually stuck I had a GH4 at the time, and I stuck it down. I just put it on the chair, right, and shot myself that way. And yeah. Oh, so yeah. I have the whole interviews and everything.
Cool.
And I went back last year as well and did the same thing, and met Sylvia Anderson's daughter, Dee Anderson, there, and that was kind of it's kind of nice just going back there, and another person who was the main puppeteer, and it was kind of nice going back and people talk to you as if it was yesterday.
Right, because they still watch it, and it's like still fresh for them. Like it lives forever, basically now. I think they've just recently put it back on, rebroadcast it, so it's all become popular again. And do you know which? Because I remember, I think your hand is in in the show, right?
Yeah. Oh, that was the other thing. Yeah, I had to use my hand for the puppets, right? So one story was I had to hold a glass that Lady Penelope held, and as you raise the glass, the glass is shot by a bad guy, right? And I had to be very brave and hold this glass whilst the cameraman, who had a good eye, I guess, went and aimed it at the glass and shot the glass, and they got the shot. It was a high-speed shot, right? But yeah, there were sorts of like moments in there. My feet were used too. Like the puppets couldn't quite walk properly, but I could, and so I would be like a guard walking backwards and forwards outside and things like that, or my hands would be grabbing inside of an aeroplane, or that sort of stuff. So. Yeah, so I never got a credit for all this work that I did, which I would have liked,
Right. Well, I mean, people rarely get all the credit that they do, for sure.
Yeah, but I really do appreciate, working there, and there were just wonderful camaraderie there. So yeah, it was a wonderful place to work. Go in at 9, and everybody was always dressed up in they had ties on in those days. Like everybody these days on the crew have T-shirts, right?
Yeah, usually their other crew shirts from their other shows that they've been on.
That's right. Yeah. So totally different dress code.
And so, did you go directly from AP Films to Canada, or did you ever try to go work at the BBC or whatever?
No, I didn't. I tell you, one of the reasons I didn't continue working there was. I found it very claustrophobic working in the studios where there was no sunlight. And this is you go in there and you're locked away, no windows, no nothing. I just decided I wanted to try to take a break. And I was young, and I had my first flat, and this flatmate, he wanted to do garden contracting. And I went and did garden contracting, and I got out in the fresh sunlight, and I kind of enjoyed it for a while. Until winter hit and there was no work, right? But I ended up renovating an old stable in Maidenhead and turning that into a coffee bar. And we had folk singers and poets and things like that. It's very, very bohemian, beatnik type of time and stuff like that. The birds are playing in the background. BYRDS and. And I put people like Paul Simon, John Rembo, and these sorts of people. And the music scene was really wonderful. When I was a little bit younger, I used to go and see the Rolling Stones and those kinds of groups that were really popular in London. The Yardbirds, So my good friend, next door neighbor guy, called John Dummer, he had a blues band, and I guess the whole being young and like it, just I don't know, it was just the music just took me away for a bit, So,
yeah, I mean that's always my favorite era that I always kind of wish that I was born into, was like that whole 60s, 70s thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Facebook, and I've actually was on the London 60s and 70s, and somebody recognized me, and I used to go down when we were laid off in between working in the studios. I used to go down to this place in Swanage, in Dorset, and I've reconnected with a whole bunch of school friends just on Facebook, and from that time.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. I luckily had some photos that I took, and I was able to send them some when they were young, and now of course they're much older. So it's kind of nice that you can do that now with the internet.
When do you remember the first time you saw the Rolling Stones? Were they like already famous, or was it like one of those?
Yeah. Well, I didn't see. I went to Richmond to go and see the Rolling Stones, and we couldn't get into this pub. And this is with a friend of mine who has a blues band called the John Dummer Blues Band, who now lives in France, who I've also made contact with on the internet from over 45 years ago. We haven't met, right? By the way. But
what year were you trying to get into the show?
Well, I was probably 16, so
like 61 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, 60. Yeah, it would probably be 61. And it was in this kind of sports arena. It was an inside building, and they were holding it next week. And so we went. And honestly, they were playing Chuck Berry songs and Route 66, and we just didn't know how to dance. Before we were going to dance, like Hitchhiker or The Twist or something stupid like that. But this music was so powerful, right? It was unbelievable. I remember the senses that I got when I went in and heard the Stones. It was unbelievable. So we used to go and see the Stones sometimes twice a week. There was another place called Eel Pie Island in Twickenham. We used to go to see them there in an old hotel, and that was all run down. And Love John Baldry used to play there, and a lot of other famous artists. So the music scene was just taken off. We had coffee bars. There was a jazz barge that I went down to, and they played jazz. Right, there was folk clubs. I had a folk club, and I booked Paul Simon for £20 for this when he first started. Right, So there was music was very much part of my life, and I did try to play the guitar, but I never turned out to be that great.
Well, that's our first episode. I hope you enjoyed it. That's just the first part. Please comment, hit likes, or subscribe, which will really help the show out and help us reach new listeners. I hope you and your loved ones keep safe and enjoy one another's company this holiday season.